All right, so I'd like to sit up. I'd like to introduce Joanne Gabriel, who was referred to us by Susan Daly. Joanne is a master gardener, so that brings us to two, and turns out lives across the street from me. So I was like, who knew? Now, Joanne was good enough to tend my vegetable garden for me last summer when I was away, and I'll probably be pressing her into more service this year. So I knew of her gardening skills, and she used to be very involved in the Henley School vegetable garden and such, but I didn't know she was an actual master gardener. But Joanne is excited to join us on this effort and help us with the IDing and et cetera. So welcome aboard.
Hi, everyone.
And just quick introductions. We have Mary Louise Morgan, who is on the Parks and Rec Commission. Pam Geary is our town director of parks. Laura Mosier is our master gardener who's been working, and if you saw the article in the paper, was the person who really brought this to the attention of Parks and Rec and sort of the sorry state of affairs at some of our parks. Juliet Kane represents the pollinator pathway, and we've gotten to know her over the last few years with some projects and things we've been working on, and she and Deepak have really been helping educate the commission on all things, native plants and the importance of sustaining our natural environment, reducing the use of pesticides, et cetera. Chris Filmer probably needs no introduction. He's involved in so many things in town. He was on the cover of the Darien Neighbors magazine with the Land Trust a few weeks ago, is our probably primary keeper of Selleck's Woods, and Amy During is a member of the commission.
Can I say that I'm representing the masculine gender?
Thank you, Chris. Thank you very much. And I see Patty Baumgartner has joined us, who represents the Parks and Recreation Committee of the representative town meeting.
And Lori, can I add something?
Yes, ma'am.
So I put together a list of who I thought were committee working group members. But I think, like I had a conversation with Chris before, I added him on here, but just because he was involved with the walkthrough. But I just want to let everybody know, now Juliet Kane was last night, I sent her the email. So we'll just have to identify who actually is a working group member at each meeting. Patty, I think you jumped on board last night, right? So
No, Patty was there initially.
I was there initially, and I was on the walking tour on March 26th. Yep.
I knew that. I just didn't know whether you were actually on a working group each month.
No problem. Happy to help, Pam.
Okay.
Okay. So again, however we want to clean up that working group list, we can add or delete. Just saying that. Okay.
Okay.
Did you reach Jimmy Ma or not?
I left him a phone message and I never heard back from him.
Okay, fair enough. I texted him as well.
Okay. So we'll try to get an email address for him and have him join us when he can, because Jimmy's been helping us, for those who don't know, identify and do a full inventory of every tree in Cherry Lawn Park, which is, as Amy is learning, quite an undertaking. So, but at the end of the day, we'll have that.
Jimmy also works every day, so this time frame may be problematic.
Yep. I believe he works at Henkel. Okay.
He does.
So Amy, do you want to run with this, or Mary Louise?
So Mary Louise, why don't you start off and we can kind of give the overview that we did at the commission last night quickly, and then we can get into the weeds.
Well, we did, and the weeds, that's appropriate. We did the walkthrough on the 26th, along with Chris Andreas and his partner, who you have now agreed to hire, correct, Pam? Starting July 1?
Not necessarily. I had walked through with him and he gave me what he thought was a decent quote, but he still hadn't met with your group, and your walkthrough was quite more extensive than my walkthrough. So I have on the agenda here that you would, basically review and discuss the bids that he gave you, the quotes. So,
Mary Louise, I don't think we're there yet.
Okay, all right, okay. But I think most of the people who were there that day were impressed with his knowledge of the invasives, as well as the plants that we wanted to keep and nurture. So I think he would be a good person to go with, and so on. And I know Amy got the 3 bids. You've also been copied on them, Pam. So we have to discuss that this afternoon.
Can I
Yeah.
ask what's the name of the landscaper you're talking about?
Yes, it's Stony Brook Turf, SBT.
Thank you.
Juliet, Charles worked for Eastern Land Management. That's how I first was into him. He since has left that company and started his own. So that's a brand new company name.
Okay.
Well, so during this walkthrough, we basically decided, or it was suggested, that we divide the area up into 3 pieces, A, B, and C. The A is the section which abuts the pond and runs along the pond. B is the area that runs behind the basketball court. And then C is the area basically that runs behind the garden. And he more or less indicated that he would start with A and try to maybe move into B as much as the budget would allow. So that seemed to be reasonable.
Mary Louise, may I interrupt for 1 second?
Sure.
We're getting a lot of background noise, so if everybody could turn off their mics except for who's speaking, that would probably be helpful. Thank you.
Okay, well, did you all understand the 3 pieces, A, B, C? And that seemed to be a reasonable place to start. And we should be able to make a major difference by focusing in on this A group, maybe edging into B, and then figuring out how much more money we're going to need to finish this off. So as we go into next budget's procedure, we'll have a better idea of what the cost factor is going to be.
Yeah.
So that's pretty much where it was left.
Yeah, so I think you've kind of got it. I think the purpose of dividing it into 3 groups was a couple-fold. The first was we were worried about how far our budget would go. I think we've got 18K, is that right? Pam, what's the budget?
No,
8?
8,000.
8, okay. All right, originally it was 8, then it went down to 8. Okay, so, and indeed, the budget that he gave us for the 3 sections does fall within that range, so that's kind of good. We also broke it up into 3 groups because we just wanted to kind of get our arms around the whole space so that we had kind of a language with each other to discuss the different areas. We then talked about kind of sectioning out or doing kind of a triumvirate of efforts. The first was going to be SBT, which is this Charles, who Pam found, who I do think is also is enthusiastic to do the job. Not only do I think he was capable, but he was enthusiastic about it, so that made me happy. The second kind of part of the effort would be volunteers. And this is an important category because the budget, we're not allowed to touch the 8,000 until the new year, which will be the summer. And as we know, the little invasives are sprouting now. So it's going to be more work in the summer and more, we'll use up our dollars more quickly because the plants are going to be bigger in the summer and the fall. So if we could kind of get going on the volunteer part, that would be great. And then the third part of this is that I'm going to look into goats because apparently in some other towns, they're using goats dealing with invasives successfully. I know nothing about goats. So I don't know if somebody said last night they eat absolutely everything, including the barn that they're housed in. So I don't know if they know which invasives to eat and which are native plants and so on and so forth. So I'll get educated on that, and anybody else who wants to help with goats, I'll welcome them into the herd. Yes.
Amy, this might be helpful, but you know, New Canaan use goats for Irwin Park, and
Yes. Yes.
do you know the women involved? Because I can put you in touch with them.
Oh, thank you so much. I'd love to hear who you know, but I do have the name of a woman who was I think in charge of that program, but it would be
Okay.
good. I could probably dig up her name quickly and send it to you.
Okay.
Yes, and
These-
I sent her a text and I haven't heard back.
Okay, I can get in. Well, I can certainly help you with that. And they,
Excellent.
the one thing I will caution you is it is expensive. At least the place that they rented the goats from was very expensive. I would say like $10,000. And you do need to put fencing up so that they don't, the goats don't escape. And in terms of what they eat and don't eat, they'll probably demolish everything in sight. So you would want to, fence it so that you're targeting specific problems. But that's
Okay. Well, those are three things that are super important that I'm now educated on and feeling a little daunted. But we'll persevere, and I'll find out more about goats and report back to you. I in general just like the idea, but we'll see if it'll work or not, if we have the money or not. We'll go
it's
from
wonderful. And I think you'll find that New Canaan, they did all sorts of things, like they had competitions for naming the goats. And you could name a goat, you could make a donation and name the goat.
Oh, brilliant.
Sort of thing. And they had many volunteers who would come and look after the goats, give them water.
Yeah, I see a partnership here with the Nature Center or some kind of fundraiser or something.
Yeah, it is a really easy way to build community around the issue.
Juliet, could you tell us what park they did that in, please?
It's Irwin Park, IRWIN.
Irwin, yeah.
Thank you.
So I think it would be useful now if we started to talk a little bit about the volunteer part, because that's a little bit more opaque, and I'm not really sure how that would work. Patty, you had some thoughts. Maybe you want to talk about that.
Just to fill in the folks that weren't on the meeting last night, I had said last year on Earth Day, I had a lot of chips donated to Cherry Lawn Park, and we did trails. We refurbished the back trails behind the baseball, or behind the basketball, from the left of the pond basketball all the way up to the garden. And we did that over 2 weekends, and it was a great success. All I did was email out my group of all the Cherry Lawn dog people and of the pickleball people. And I really had a tremendous response of people from all ages. And so I'm confident that we can get that same kind of turnout. My one question is, so I have 2 questions. Number one, if we're going to have these folks, Stony Brook come in and take out the invasives, are you more interested in the volunteers planting new plants? We can't reach anything high, and we could do some things low. So Laura Mosier and the rest of you, for example, who are very in tune to that, if you could tag what the invasives are and we could go with clips, we could do the lower part of that. And that's something I think we could get started on, over the next few weeks. But the big stuff has to be done by Stony Brook. And I don't know what comes first. So I'd leave that open to you all.
Yeah, thanks, Patty. First off, that's a great offer. We talked really briefly about this last night. And I think the idea was, hopefully, if Joanne and Laura could help us identify, I don't know, pink ribbons or something, what needed to go. And then, Patty, if you could galvanize the volunteers and let us know, we'll all try and be there, or I will anyway, to help out. And I do like the idea that it's Earth Day. I think it would be wonderful if we could get advanced work done before SBT got there. Just to get going on this as much as we could. I don't know, we'd have to coordinate with Pam on how to get it all removed and, sort of facilitate that kind of thing. But that's how I just envisioned it, but I'm open to other suggestions.
So you're considering rallying volunteers this weekend?
It's Thursday, so
Yeah,
that's not realistic.
And Earth
I
Day
would
is
have
this
liked to
weekend.
have done that prior, but when asked about getting volunteers last night, that was my response, but that's not realistic. That doesn't mean I couldn't rally for the the next week, but I don't know if it's putting the cart before the horse. I feel like the big guys with the trucks should be kind of coming in first and
Yeah.
taking out the sections, right?
Yeah.
So I
Yes.
could see the volunteers and Mary Louise, you know this because you're at the gardens all the time. I could see the volunteers doing the back area behind the gardens, right? But the volunteers aren't going to be doing those big things with the massive vines hanging down by the pond.
Oh, no, they can't do that. And I don't think we want them do it, Parson, because we don't want anyone to get hurt or anything like that. I just was hoping that we could do something to get a little bit of a jump on, the season before they get huge. Maybe there was something we could do a little bit and also get people excited that we are doing this project, particularly the people who are there a lot.
Can I just mention a couple of things? Because there's some overlap with what the Pollinator Pathway is doing, and I'm thinking that it does make a lot of sense for us to work together. Just because the more united we are, the more powerful the message. But the Pollinator Pathway has received a grant from One Tree Planted. It's only $2,500, but for us, that's really big. And we are allowed to use the money for removing invasives and planting. And we rely on volunteers to do the removal, and then we'll spend the money on trees. And the days that we have allocated are April 30th, so that's a week from Saturday. And then we have another session on May 21st. And we've been discussing this, obviously not knowing what you guys were doing. We've been discussing this for a while with the Nature Center. And where we are going to work is not obviously where you are. It's kind of to the, if you're in the front of the Nature Center, it's to the right by that parking lot. It's full of burning bush and bush honeysuckle and that sort of thing. And so as you're talking about volunteers, it made me think that the way we go about it, it's not scientific by us by any means, but we have a mailing list, we Instagram, we call on the people that we always know turn up. And when we had a planting event, a tree planting event at the town hall last fall, and we actually got a lot of volunteers. But I think that two things. One is that we don't want to take your volunteers. I don't think we should be doing this in silos where we're working on one thing and then you're working on another, and it looks like we don't know what we're all doing. I think to be seen to be working in tandem is very, very important. And I think, but one issue that I see is volunteer fatigue. It's like every weekend you've got to go and pull an invasive might be an issue. So that I don't necessarily have an answer to that, but I think we have to be creative of how we can make this interesting and really, really important. So we to educate people about how bad these things are. We're creating a poster for the Spring into Nature event on Saturday that's going to show the burning bush, because that's the one that we're focusing on, and then showing native alternatives. And then we're going to have a sign-up sheet for people to work with us. But so we have this event this weekend where we can do that. But I know that's a lot of information, and more information than actually answers to the question. But I do think it's important that we, at least we seem to be working together, sharing resources, sharing marketing materials. I think that could make it very, very powerful. In fact, one of the questions I was going to ask you is if there are other parts of the town that are interested in this, like public works, because when I asked for the burning bush to be removed at town hall, you would have thought I'd asked for the firstborn to be given up to me. It was very difficult to get it out. So I do think there's a lot of education, and the more education we can do, the more interest I think people will have in helping. And maybe it won't happen as quickly as you want. I know, now it's spring and everything's coming out, but maybe better to delay a little bit, just to sort of have a plan, a really thought out plan in place.
Thank you, Juliet. I would say, in listening to everything you said, that was very helpful in terms of resources. Laura Mosher, I would say if you could tag bushes for me prior to April 30th, I'm pretty confident we could wipe out behind the garden, or do at least start there. So you know how you talked about baby steps, and then we can move on to bigger steps. Let's try and do that. Let's take a step forward on that.
I am going to be unavailable after the 27th for about 6 weeks. So
Could
I
you do
could,
it prior
I
to
can
the
help you.
So maybe Joanne could jump in there?
Yeah, I can help. I work full time, so it'd have to be after work or on a weekend.
okay.
Laura, would there be a way, like, we're not asking you to do the work, and I understand you have things coming up. Would there be a way where you and I could, walk the park for an hour and you point it out and I tag it?
You mean after?
No, I meant like prior. You said you're occupied after the 27th on.
Right. I only have until Monday. Monday I go for a COVID test, and then I'm having surgery, and then I'm not around. So it would have to be, Saturday. This Saturday.
Okay, let's talk offline. If we can do it, we can.
Okay.
And if not, we'll get somebody else to help out. Not a big deal. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, and Patty, we can also, it sounds like Joanne is really proficient in there, and I love hanging with Joanne. So it would be super fun if, the three of us or whomever wants to join, and if Laura is doing important things for, what she needs to do, we can follow up after.
Amy, I wouldn't worry about the invasives getting large and having this feeling like we've got to get a jump start on this. They've been there for decades. So 3 months isn't going to make a bit of difference.
It isn't. I just see I see them getting bigger and bigger, growing out of the ground, going, oh, every inch is another $1.
And each invasive has an ideal time for eradication, depending on when they seed and if they flower. So if you wanted to have the Boy Scouts come in and just pull garlic mustard, which is, very basic and easy to identify and boring as all heck to do, this is an ideal time to do that before it flowers.
You have that schedule, don't you, Laura? I think you showed it to me.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. If you could get that out to us, or maybe,
Sure.
or whatever, and Joanne can help us. Because that might be more of a quick hit to, and if we know the timing, work with something that, now is the right time. Pam?
Yeah, I'd also like to give Chris an opportunity to speak, because we talked a couple hours before this meeting, and he has some pretty valuable information to share. So Chris?
No, certainly. Well, I'm really enthused that you have that enthusiasm to get at this, because I have for the last 17 years been at the practical end of this and not at the theoretical end. Although you have to understand the basics of it, and the points that Doug Tallamy has made over the last decade, teaching us why native plants are so much more desirable than invasive plants. But I'm going to cut to the chase and just say that I was on most of the walk. I missed, I think, Laura's introduction, but that when we went out to Cherry Lawn. And I've worked with Cherry Lawn. I've cut down a lot of trees. We had a lot of trees cut down and done some myself and worked around it. I won't say it's amusing, but it's interesting to listen to some people that have now got the religion and they don't know what's behind that big bush over there. And it's a lot. So what I saw when I went there was the fact that I know the forest part, if you like, the woods part of Cherry Lawn. And I know that about 60% of it is winged euonymus, every one of which is an invasive species. But they're lovely. They have a beautiful red color, as you know, where they get the burning bush name from. And, you know, when Lena and I discussed it, I didn't have the heart to say, you know, we know it's there, we're going to go and eradicate it. And be left with starting point. So we backed off there. And then when you and the others started moving away, we talked about some of the lakeside minor invasive plants that are there, and they can be, attacked. But if you lifted your eyes up and you saw that wall of probably 80-year-old or more rubble, the kind of thing you see on the side of highways, where trees are just left to fall, they get mangled up with each other. I saw trees of heaven down there, 30 yards into the, into the bush, and that's tough stuff in there. You don't want to send people in there who don't know what they're doing. And then I'm looking at some maybe easy stuff like garlic mustard, but which should be attended to. And thought to myself, you've got to be pretty to launch a war on this. You've got to be pretty selective in what you do. You haven't got the soldiers, you haven't got the knowledge necessarily to do it. So I think I mentioned to Amy that that a survey and an understanding of the macro problem that you have is important, and that you should specify what it is and set that aside as a separate task to be done. In other words, to clean up that back area so that you can see what's there, and then you can send people in to start eradicating trees of heaven and Japanese knotweed or whatever might be there, each of which is a challenge in itself. So I would be inclined to continue what you're doing, start learning about the various levels of invasives, ones that are really, dangerously able to just shut off a whole, geographic area, and others that you can work on in clumps with a well-defined description of what you're after, and places where you can, and a timetable to attack each of them. So you're really not talking about conquering the world here. We're going to just understand what's there, and that's what you're doing now. And you experimenting, and you're building your knowledge base. And I suggest that you kind of document it. Maybe have a good map that says the stages that each one is at. And then as you go forward and you're more literate about what you're doing, you can start, saving money, because you could throw a lot of money at this. To give you an idea, I don't know if you've been to the DCA bird sanctuary there. That's 4 acres. And we had professionals come in and remove 63 huge bags of invasive plants, stack them up and get rid of them. And then we started analyzing the soil and deciding what we were going to do. But it was there were big leaps in the beginning. Now we're into the minutiae and we can deal with things. For example, on Sunday, 2 days' time, we're going to have a trail fixed at Selleck's Woods. So we've got, you know, 1.5 miles of trails that we're going to put wood chips on. And they are useful, but when you've got a decent trail, you know, they're not vital. What is vital is that if you look around you, there's garlic mustard coming up, and it comes up every year. So I'm going to tell the guys who are raking, I'm going to give you a paper bag, and when you see those things, stick them in the bag. And because garlic mustard, especially when it's wet, comes out very easily. But if we left it and didn't do anything for 2 or 3 years, it would completely cover the undergrowth. You know, there'd be no what there is now, which are trout lilies and princess pines and lovely ferns. But sometimes when you're there, walk the lower part of Selleck's Woods in about a month's time, and you'll see the whole place is now covered with ferns, May apples, as I said, trout lilies, and it's really beautiful. And that's the end result of 15 years of work. So that's the only, I think, half useful thing I can say to you. But I just love the energy that's coming out of the screen that I'm looking at, and the enthusiasm. And just
Chris,
got
that was really helpful. I just took like a full page and a half of notes of what you said. That was extremely helpful in terms of laying out a plan. Thank you.
that's it. I mean, I could go on forever, but that's what I suggest that you might do that.
Could we circle back to the bids a little bit? Because, you know, July 1st will be here. I think we should conclude on, you know, how we're going. We have just the $8,000, at least for now, but how we are going to allocate that. And one question I had is that the different bids, it had the cost for the work, but then each section had monthly maintenance, which I think we have to cover with our 8,000. And it wasn't clear to me the way it was written, is that every month or just the summer months or whatever. So, you know, I think we have to figure out, you know, before July 1st, you know, what, assuming we go with Charles, what his marching orders will be, and that we have the funds.
Well, each one of them, you take trees of heaven, for example.
Oh.
Those trees can grow to 75 feet, 7 stories up. I don't know if you ever read the book, A Tree Grows in Brooklyn.
Mm-hmm.
The tree they were talking about comes out of a drain and goes up 50 feet. So that is a 5-year job. So you'd have a section on trees of heaven, and you do the first lot, and then the rest would all fall under maintenance in the future, because it's much easier once you've started.
Right.
So I would, if you're spending 8,000 now, know that you're going to spend another 2,000 just to keep that 8,000 effective.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I think if we look at section, if we were thinking we're going to start with section A, his bid is just a squeeze over 6,000, but then it says monthly maintenance 1,760. Well, we basically have enough for the work and 1 month's of maintenance. If I'm interpreting this correctly.
Yeah, we've got to set aside, 20% for what you're going to spend the next year on the same project. But you're doing two things: you're widening your geography, and you're getting deeper into the issue.
Right.
So there's two directions you're going, but don't be disheartened. You know, get the plan going, make a big map of what there, make notes on it, and that will encourage people to know that although what they've spent 2 days doing this, it doesn't look like much. In the end, you know, it's going to be one finger after the other, then eventually it'll be a fist of achievement.
Right.
Thanks, Chris. It's really helpful, and obviously you're very sage in the whole discussion of this. Joanne, do you think that as part of kind of tagging and looking at things, you could help us create the map? And
Sure, I could try to. I mean, I don't have a real sense of what's. I haven't walked Cherry Lawn yet, so I will have to go there and take a look. But maybe I can go there with somebody, and sure, I can absolutely help do that.
Pam, do we have any town, like little, any kind of maps of town, like a little map of each park that we could use to be filling in?
well, we've got the master plan, so we
That's
can
true.
kind
So
of
that
use
would have-
that and
those
just
would have maps.
I
overlay
can go
on.
photograph all the sections at Cherry Lawn that we're talking about and put it all together. And
Yeah.
if that's helpful for you, Joanne, for a first start.
Patty,
But
what
Joanne,
did you just say? I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
I can go, I've already photographed them, kind of through winter, spring, summer, and fall, because, with Mary Louise, and then it was Tira at the time when we started this project with Laura over a year or so ago. And we were taking pictures then. So I've tried to take pictures winter, summer, winter, spring, summer, and fall. So what I said was I can take photographs over the next day or so and share them with Joanne. Especially if I can pull some of the old ones too, and that can help give you, a feel for what we're talking about.
Google Earth will probably be helpful as well.
Joanne, would you have time Saturday to meet for an hour at Cherry Lawn?
Sure, I can absolutely do that on Saturday.
Okay, maybe, in the morning?
Yeah.
Okay.
See, you have
Patty,
have-
does that work for you on Saturday?
Depends on the time.
Yeah, depends on the time. Me too.
Early, I can.
you probably have 3 ecosystems just in that one Cherry Lawn Park. And they're different, each one of them. So you'd be able to map that, which is really to do with the moisture in the soil. That's the biggest factor. So I think it's very important for people that are working on it. I know I'm going to divert for a second, but in the Battle of Alamein along North Africa, the Rommel was coming down, and then the Allies would retreat, and it went on and on like that. And the guys that were fighting didn't have a clue what was going on. And this guy Montgomery arrived, you know who that is, Juliet. And he wasn't a very big general, but he figured out that he had to have everybody in the army know what they were doing. So he said, we are here, the Germans are here, we're going to do this, and this is going to be the result. And everybody suddenly knew what everybody else was doing, and there's a great deal of power in that. So even though there's somebody working on one tree, they know that they're going towards an objective which is attainable and visible. So it's
Well, Mary Louise, you know how in front of the gardens you have the sign that you're
Yes.
showing what you're doing at the gardens? I can envision doing something similar at, Pam, remember how the Boy Scout did that sign for us? That's right by the playground, kind of in the front. We could even start, kind of with a map there for people who were interested in terms of, Juliet, you were talking about, creating awareness and things like that. If we put a map up there and start to show different photographs of what the invasives were, what we want to work on to take out. That's an education program for anybody walking through the parks over the next, few weeks and months. And then I mean, I can almost see us putting like, I don't know, little stars or little something as we've developed it, and people can watch the progress as we go along. Just an idea.
And show them what
That's a
the,
great idea. And I think that will encourage volunteers as well to help.
show them what the plants look like, pictures of.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Well, Laura printed all that out for us like a year and a half ago after we walked the parks. And then she gave the presentation to the commission, and then she gave a presentation to RTM committee. And it was so helpful because, as Lori knows, right, Lori, you were like, I didn't know those pretty little yellow things on the ground were invasives. And so the more we know, the more everybody's aware, and then they can help in advance. They can start training their minds for what they're going to be working as they go into battle, as you say, Mr. Fillmore.
Okay. Oh. I'm shutting up, so. Anybody else like to add something?
We're all muted, 100% muted.
So we're going to meet on Saturday morning.
And
Is that-
everybody who would like to join on Saturday, I'm going to send out an email. Can you raise your hand?
I think I'm going to have a conflict.
Okay, I gotcha. All right.
There's a lot of events. Saturdays, big cleanup days, and
Saturday's complicated. Pam, I'm
Yeah,
going to keep you
Saturday's-
on it just so you know.
complicated.
And it's the Spring into Nature event at the Nature Centre, so parking at Cherry Lawn might be an issue Saturday.
How about first thing, like before it starts?
Yeah, it's probably a good idea.
Like 7:30. I don't know what's too early for y'all. 7:30 would be great.
What
I'm up
what
at
time
5.
does the event start? Do we know?
I think it's 10. Let me look. I would be very interested in just peeling off from that and just coming to see the areas that you're talking about too. And
Okay.
Chris, did you show them the Phragmite tarping that we did at the Nature Centre?
The event is 8 o'clock in the morning to 8 to 4 at Cherry Lawn.
I'm sorry, Jenna, what you said about the Phragmites?
Yes. I don't know if you had shown.
Well, we're going to find out when we open the top. Right?
Well, it's interesting that nothing's come through yet except milkweed.
That's a 2-year project. To do that. We're getting towards the end of it, so we should celebrate that when it comes up.
Okay, well, I think we've made a couple of we've made some headway here. I think one more thing we should talk about is how often we'd like to meet. Whether it's monthly, whether it's bi-monthly, whether it's every other month. What are you thinking, Lori?
I wouldn't suggest going any longer than monthly. Some of the other groups are doing about every 3 weeks, or but I think we want to know what the next action step is. I keep circling back to the fact that we have to conclude how we're going to spend our $8,000 and when. So should we be doing that in the summer? Should we not be spending it until the fall? Again, I'm seeing the references to the monthly maintenance, which is really going to cut into how much we can do. But I just think
So to that end, Pam, can you drill down a little bit on this quote and see exactly what he's talking about, and let us know? I think once we have this meeting and report back, we'll probably have a little bit more of a handle on things. And my expectation is, we'll get them in there and spend the money pretty quickly. But I could be educated that that's not the right time for certain plants, or maybe we just tackle certain plants in the big, in the beginning, and then we take care of other plants later. I think this meeting on Saturday or whenever everybody's available is going to lend itself to the next step. In that regard, the answers will start to clarify. If that
I
works
don't
for
know
you.
whether Laura, Joanne, do you have any feelings? I mean, if we have our money available on July 1st, should we be getting him in there as soon thereafter, or should we be waiting? And because remember, we just talked about like basically a whole section as opposed to going after specific plants. He was going to come in with the heavy machinery and do the big vines and all of that. So what's your thought on timing of that?
Part of me feels that coming in with the big machinery and removing the invasives and not having a plan as to what we're going to do with that. Are we going to tarp it and mulch that area where the invasives are removed, where the porcelain berry is, because you will be basically like rototilling that soil and causing the weed seeds to come up and sort of encouraging more growth if we don't have a plan as to how we're going to suppress it.
Okay.
Would Joanne and
Yeah,
Chris, would you agree with that?
I feel like you need to map and see what's there, definitely, and what you're dealing with and how big a job each invasive is. I mean, are you dealing with really thick vines of bittersweet? Are you dealing with porcelain berry? Are you dealing, what you have really is going to indicate, determine what they're going to do in July. I think you really need to get an idea of it. Some things are going to take, a long time to get rid of.
Well, Chris had mentioned the tree of heaven. Jimmy had pointed out one very large tree of heaven that's there. I don't know what it would take to take that tree down. Is that a good place to start, just to get rid of that massive tree of heaven?
If there's one there, there's another 5 somewhere around it.
Yeah. Did everybody get the quotes and
Undoubtedly.
the detail that was
Yeah.
sent from Charles, or no?
No.
Okay, we should get that out to everybody.
All right.
If I may just take a little more of your time, it's important to people to know what this is all about. Why are we worried about invasives? Invasives take the place of natural plants, and native plants are what provide the insects, for example, that the birds eat. That's their only source of protein, really, and lots of other things. So the end is to get rid of them so that native plants can do their job, which they're not being allowed to do. And I just wanted to tell one little story about Africa where I was brought up. And I learned 60 years ago about the acacia trees. They're like an umbrella tree. You always see them in travelogues about Kenya. There's lovely skyline, and then there's these lovely acacia trees. And they have flowers on the top of them to get near the sun. And they're big. They're a big tree. And giraffe feed on the flowers. They're the only animals that can get their necks up there. And they eat the plants, the flowers, and the process of doing that with their tongues pollinates the plants. Now the tree knows that it needs the giraffe, but not too much. So what happens is if the giraffe starts taking too much of those plants, then the plants respond. They reject. They exude a smell and a taste that appalls the giraffe. The giraffe pulls off. So it repels the giraffe. The giraffe then looks around for other trees where he can do it. And what do you know? They're all doing the same thing. So the trees are communicating with each other. And we're learning all about that in these new books that are coming out about finding the mother tree. and then the giraffe sort of sulks and goes off somewhere else. And this balance is being created over tens, maybe hundreds of thousands of years. So what we've done now, largely because of things like, the Great Dust Bowl of the 30s, when we took out all the prairie grass and put in wheat and other things. So when the drought came, they couldn't remain functional. So there was nothing there. So there was just dust, and then the dust came up, and for 6 years wiped out large parts of Texas and Arizona and other places like that. So it took 6 years before that could be repaired. So what they did is they sent envoys over to China and Korea, and they found plants there that were very hardy for that sort of thing. And they were called Multiflora Rose. And they brought them to this country, and they have taken over. They can grow up 10, 12 feet. They're like prickly roses, and they are, from a pollinator point of view, not very useful. So that's taken away that pollination effort. So those are the kind of things that when you finished your job, you can say, okay, it's not perfect, but boy, we've taken a lot. And what do you know? We've got native plants in there doing their job, which they've been designed to do for maybe millions of years. So there's a point to all this. And I think soldiers know better when they know what the target is and the eventual gain.
Thank you. Hey, Laura, can I ask you a question? Do we know if Juliet and Joanne have a copy of all the work you have already done, which was the overview of what's there? Because that alone is helpful. I mean, we walked it a few times already, but that could get them up to speed if you could send that to them.
I'd be happy to. I don't think it would be any new information for them. That was just basically an overview of what some of these invasives do and what they take the place of.
But you focused on what was there. You focused on the invasives that were there. I guess that was my point. So they at least know.
Sure.
All right, I have to hop. So I'm just going to ask, I'm going to hop off. But Amy, will you just let us know next steps? And then Joanne, I'm happy to meet you at 7:30 if that works. And Laura, if you can make it, that would be great. And if not, Joanne, I can walk you through the sections that we're talking about.
No, 7:30 is fine.
And if Amy can join us, yeah, that'd be great.
Okay, I sent an email for 8, but I can do 7:30. Joanne, you in at 7:30? Okay. Saturday at 7:30 it is. Pam, you're going to follow up. You're going to pursue SBT and get a little bit more granular.
Yes, I just wanted to also reiterate on our agenda for today. We're supposed to set the regular meeting schedule, and you need to approve the minutes from March 26th.
Okay, that's what I was leading to get to see where we wanted to go with the schedule. So I think it sounds like, Laura, you want us to meet once a month. I think that makes sense. Hopefully it makes sense with everybody else. So I can send out some dates, I guess, and hopefully everybody can make it. Is 4 o'clock okay for people? Can you jump out of work? I mean, I can just schedule it around work. For me, hopefully everybody else is pretty good around 4. Okay, good. I don't want to take up weekend time with your families, and I don't want to take nighttime time up with your families either. So, all right, I'll send out an agenda on that. I'll look into goats. Mary Louise, you're doing the notes.
And yeah,
So do you have notes to submit? I don't know if we can approve anything because I don't have any.
correct. I have to get those out to you. I have them. They haven't been typed up, but I have them.
Okay, we can approve them at the next meeting.
Yes, correct.
And so why don't we look at the third week in May on the Thursday at 4 o'clock? So we could do the third week of every month at 4 o'clock, if that works. That'd be
I like
pretty
it. So you mean May 19th at 4 o'clock? Okay, do you want to just send out some invites, an invite for that, Pam?
I don't do the invites, but I can send out an email with the dates.
Perfect, perfect.
And I'll do all the meeting links.
Exactly.
Mhm.
Yeah. Thank you. Well, I got through my list. Anybody have anything else? Laura, you good?
This is really great.
Patty?
Thank you so much for including me. It was really helpful.
Well, I think we're just at the beginning, as Chris has pointed out, but we have some enthusiasm, Chris. So hopefully we'll make a dent in this and do the right thing.
Yeah. If we create posters or anything, I'm happy to share those with you, and then we can develop things as we go.
Well, it'd be nice to tell people when we do start to get in there with a poster what we're doing and why the invasives are bad, and to Chris's point, educate people. And maybe Laura, you can do that as a follow up with your contact at the paper.
Yep. Yep. And Laura mentioned when we were all gathering that following, the article that was in both, not only the Darien, but the Norwalk and Stanford paper, that she's been contacted by one of the local radio stations who wants to interview her. So that'll be coming up later in May.
Love that front page picture, Laura, where you're wrapped up. That was amazing. I mean, those were some great photos. So thank you.
Laura, I was contacted by an agent who wants to represent you and do your media for you.
Looking
So
good.
just let me know.
Well, make sure you get 10% of the cut on that.
Oh, I will. And you've got a good hair day going, so we'll just take care of this.
Thank you all.
Hi, Patty.
Thanks so much.
Thanks,
All right,
everybody.
Laura, again, congratulations on your award that she's about to receive a volunteer award this afternoon. So
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Thanks so much. I'll see some of you on Saturday.
okay.
Great.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks all. Bye,
Bye, everyone.
Juliet.
All right.
Bye, Juliet.
Bye.
Bye, Patty.
Bye-bye.